You know, it just occurs to me, like, we should also attach the debate with this guy. We don't really talk about Jimmy Dore very much on this program anymore because he's just sort of like some middling reactionary. And we don't really share an audience with him anymore. 8 years ago, he did. Probably to the date. It was probably right around now. In 2016, I watched a video that he did with another guy on his program, Aggressive Progressive, I think it was. And they were talking about how the Supreme Court didn't matter whatsoever. And I'll talk more at the other end of this clip as to what happened after that. But 8 years later, here is Jimmy Dore hosting Candace Owens on his program, talking about how, you know, Israel's a problem, but also sort of Jews.
In their crap. I'm America first. I want to apologize for it. I'm Christianity first. I want to apologize for it. And that upsets some people because I guess, how dare she have the audacity? Well, guess what? I have the audacity, folks.
So you're saying that there was a greater Holocaust of Christians that happened, and it was committed by the Bolsheviks, and the leader of them at the time was a Jewish guy.
Well, Henry Jagoda, what really ran the Gulag camp system. So people should read, if you're interested, Alexander Solzhenitsyn talking about how shocking it was to watch the American president linking arms with Stalin, talking about we're putting an end to the Holocaust in World War II. And Stalin was still mass killing Christians in Russia. I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. And you got to take it back all the way. You know, the Bolshevik Revolution happened. They assassinated the Tsar, I think, in 1880. And then by the time they actually properly took over, I think it was around 1910. And so what was going on in Russia at that time was they immediately took over. They started a gulag system, concentration camps, where they were mass drowning Christians in barges. And this information is readily available, and yet you never learn about it. And people don't want to talk about it. It makes them very uncomfortable.
Well, I didn't hear about it until I heard you talk about it.
Yeah, Henry Jagoda, look him up. It's stunning. I mean, he must have killed alone 15 million people. Candace, and this is a person that's not even spoken about. And so that's the reason why Piers just goes, okay, yeah, no, okay, let's move on to the next point. So in my viewpoint, the Israeli government has way too much involvement with the American government, and part of that, this program, and you saw this after October 7th, Congress immediately passed that there would be we would be learning about October 7th in schools.
Hold on for 1 second. Listen. The thing that you have to be careful of here is that there are some complaints that they have about what's going on with our government in terms of Israel that are legitimate, but they are undergirded by a different complaint, and that is that Jews now are responsible for the mass killing of Christians because there was a Jew who was a Bolshevik.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll notice Candace Owens went on maternity leave late last year after criticizing Israel a little bit and having the spat with Ben Shapiro. She came back and stopped talking about Israel and started talking about how communist Jewish or Marxist Jews were the real threat here, and has been on this crisis king bit ever since. So she's found a way to pivot away from directly alienating these sort of pro-Israel parts of her audience and just stoking the anti-Semitism.
Well, that's also you'll often hear that refrain when anti-Semites are speaking about that kind of stuff in coded language, and like, I mean, I don't know, the fact it also is a giveaway where she talks about how Israel has too much involvement in our politics, but doesn't talk too much about the slaughter in and of itself, and then all of the faux history that she's engaging in there informs that as well, where she's trying to basically say the Jews are controlling everything and that's the real problem, as opposed to the foreign policy critique or the critique of the genocide or the settlements or all of that. Colonialism. She can't engage in that at all, because then that's anathema to her politics.
We should say, too, that, the history of Jews in relationship to the Bolsheviks are much more complicated than she lays out. Initially, I think the Jewish population in Russia was not fully on board. And then the anti-Bolshevik forces became pretty anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just like straight up Nazi propaganda. This is what Nazis would have said, like, hey, don't look at the Holocaust we did, because actually what we were saying was this is the threat of these Jewish communists that we actually had to react against.
Oh, yeah,
But let's hear how Jimmy Dore pushes back on this. He's
Yeah.
definitely done his homework for this.
Immediately passed that there would be we would be learning about October 7th in schools as if it was like Pearl Harbor, right? A day that will live in infamy. Why? This is not my country. That's a nonsense. And if the answer is, because it's a day that should live in infamy, why just Israel? Why just Israel?
Right.
Why not also what's happening in Armenia or happening in Nigeria or happening all over the world? Why not a day that will live in infamy? Russia actually just went through a terror attack. And Russia has a lot of Christians. I'm Christian. So if we can just start drafting over days of terror that happen on the basis
You see how,
of our religion.
here's the thing, is that she's doing exactly what Netanyahu does, but she's just doing it from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
She uses Israel and Christian interests as if they are the same thing, just on opposite sides of the coin, and she doesn't like one over the other, as opposed to, so she's just basically saying Israel is Jews, Jews are Israel, which is exactly what Netanyahu does. And that's what people who are Jewish and against what's happening in Gaza, in this country, a significant portion of them, anywhere from last polls, over 50% wanted to condition aid to Israel. Somewhere around 40 some odd percent felt like Israel was doing was genocide of the Jewish population in this country. And she is conflating these things. So that is the tip-off there, that what she's talking about is not a complaint with Israel.
Yeah, I mean, Candace, why don't we talk about your complicity in the Spanish Inquisition? I mean, I don't know if we're talking about how this is all about, Jews versus Christians, as opposed to the conversation around Israel being about empire and power and colonialism. Then, does she want a history lesson on the Spanish Inquisition?
Well, she can't raise the issue of colonialism. That's not allowed in her lexicon.
Right.
I also say, I don't think Stalin needed, Jewish people beneath him to do negative things and mass killings and incarcerations.
Let's play just a little bit more, and then I will talk about...
Russia actually just went through a terror attack, and Russia has a lot of Christians. I'm Christian. So if we can just start drafting over days of terror that happen on the basis of our religion, I'd like to draft what just happened in Russia. I want my kids to learn about that in school.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Hey, so you said the thing about concentration camps. I thought the Cecil Rhodes, Boer War concentration camps came first. Am I wrong about that?
Pardon, could you say the last tidbit?
The Boer War in South Africa when Cecil Rhodes, the architect of apartheid that Israel uses,
what year was that?
White guy in 1889 or something, I thought.
It could have been. You might be right. I know that. I think the Gulag system was particularly evil.
Yeah.
So, but you could be right. I wouldn't.
Well, if you read Tragedy and Hope.
Point.
You read Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. They have pictures of it. It looks like Auschwitz. And the Rhodes Scholarship is still available to this day. Clinton, I think Obama was one. We still have stuff in that guy's name. That guy invented that stuff. In fact, his little cadre with Wall Street invented the Bolsheviks and the Nazis, which is kind of interesting.
And it's crazy because so many of those sick,
here we go.
demented
down the.
I mean, she's said before, and by the way, kept on by the Daily Wire. This was in 2019. If Hitler wanted to make Germany great and just have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is he had dreams outside Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German.
We've played that recently.
That's also...
I'll tell you something. We would be much better off. The ex-fundamentalists who get onto some of these YouTube shows. You could take the kid out of fundamentalism, but sometimes that sort of I need a worldview. It may be a lunatic one that I get from just around the corner from Alex Jones, but as long as I get a worldview that's going to explain everything to me, then I'm okay. But that show, I mean, the idea that Jimmy Dore is now providing no pushback onto the quasi-anti-Semitic, if not full-on anti-Semitic rantings of
Nazi revisionism.
Candace Owens.
Yeah.
Nazi revisionism is not surprising to me. I said before the clip that the genesis of my issues with Jimmy Dore, we weren't friends, but we were friendly, was watching him say on his program that it didn't matter who the Supreme Court picked and that Donald Trump wouldn't be that bad and maybe he'd pick Peter Thiel as the Supreme Court justice. And I emailed him and I said, you want to come on tomorrow and defend this position? Because I'm gonna play the clip, but I would rather, I want to give you the opportunity to defend it. I don't want to talk about you when you're not there. And he said, go ahead. I think the quote was, rip me a new a-hole. And so we played the clip, and he must have been listening to the show. He called in. I think he might have texted Michael and said he was calling in, and he called in, and we had an impromptu debate about it. All the while, Michael was sitting where you're sitting, texting me or DMing me, don't take the headshot, because it was, I didn't want to embarrass him, but I wanted to make it clear that there's a real danger in allowing Republicans, and particularly a Donald Trump, who would at that point said he was going to appoint who the Heritage Foundation wanted, to the Supreme Court. And here we are, 8 years later, with the first individual right that had been in existence for 50 years taken away in the form of Dobbs, with the complete deconstruction of the administrative state between Loper and Raimondo and Jerksey or Jarkasey, and the idea that the president is basically a king. The laws exist, they just don't apply to him. He can do illegal acts. They're illegal, but he's immune from accountability. Do I think that people voted the way they did because of Jimmy Dore? No, but I don't think that people vote the way they do because of what we do here either. It's all butterfly wings and stomping out stupidity in areas where you should.
And you didn't even, his quote was that the moon would fall into Lake Michigan before
he felt I was voting out of fear.
Overturned Roe.
As if the ballot gives a shit as to what your state of mind is when you vote.
Yeah.
You vote out of fear, you vote out of total euphoria. The vote is one vote, and it counts either for or against somebody, or it provides someone a greater margin than they would have had. That's it. Vote doesn't know how you voted. There's no intent that gets registered. This vote was cast for Donald Trump, but unenthusiastically. This vote was cast for Donald Trump only because they didn't like Biden or Hillary Clinton or whatever it is. That's not the way it works.
Well, that's, what happens when you frame voting as an expression of your soul or some kind of like piece of artistry as opposed to a strategic tool.
We're going to add that to Friday's show, that clip.
We should. The thing for Jimmy is he just provided a home for people that hated Hillary Clinton because of being a woman. He has issues with women. He said a worker, would punch me in the face if I ever got into 5 feet of them, and seemed to really get a kick out of an image of me getting punched in the face. So that's really what it is in the end of the day. There were a lot of people looking for legitimate anger that legitimized their feelings about Hillary Clinton. The
funny part is he was convinced that she had Parkinson's, and I'm still waiting for that to show up.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if we mentioned this, but he thought the theory was that you just let Hillary lose, and we'll in 4 years elect his number one politician, Elizabeth Warren.
Yes, that was his choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his choice at the time.
Also, the Boer thing is, first of all, just not true that was the first concentration camp. Dakota Indians were kept in a concentration camp in the 1862 war in this country. You can just search Dakota concentration camp, Minnesota, and see a picture of their teepees all along the Mississippi River there. And I just think it's a little bit like black people were also put in concentration camps in the Boer War. I think it's interesting to just focus on the Boers. A little bit adjacent to white supremacist propaganda once again.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.